Hi and welcome to High on Coding. I'm your host Mohammed Azam, and in this screencast I'm going to show you some of the changes of ASP.NET 4.0, and this screencast is mainly focused on the control ID changes which will allow you to have complete control over how the ID will be rendered of the control. So let me go ahead and add a page, and I'm using Visual Studio 2010 or RC. So if you've been programming with web forms, then you know that whatever ID you have, it will be concatenated with the container ID. So if I have a grid view over here, the ID generated will be derived from the container. So let's say that if I add a master page, so let's add a master page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove everything from here and use the master page. Oops. Let's first inherit. So master page over here is site.master. And now I can say that I'm going to use a content, and content ID is default. Okay. The next thing is what I want to do is I want to create a grid view over here. So let me first, I've already added a Northwind database or Northwind link to SQL, which will be used to kind of populate the grid view. Just wanted to show you how from the scratch that how everything works. And you can populate your grid view any way you like. So I'm just going to say db equal to Northwind data context and grid view customers.data source equal to db.customers, and we don't really have the grid view right now, but what I'm going to do is build the grid view. So let's go over here and create a grid view control. Let's call it grid view customers, and you can say auto generate column false or true if you want. What I'm going to do is add one more column to it, which will be a text box. Simply, I will have a text box over here. ID will be txt name, run at server. Okay, let's go over there and there we go. Let's compile this. Let's run this application so you'll have a better idea how the application looks in the browser. So we have text boxes in the first column, and the rest of the three columns simply prints information from the Northwind database customer table. If I go and see the source, let me minimize this, you will see that the grid view ID, which grid view is basically a table, so it has been changed to content placeholder 1 underscore gv customers. Okay, and content placeholder 1 is basically the parent of the grid view. So if you want to use it in your JavaScript code, then you have to refer to this ID. And if you have some sort of a user control in which the JavaScript references the grid view control, then it will be very hard because user control can be used in many different pages, and by putting a constant ID, content placeholder 1 underscore gv customer, it will not work on different pages. All right. So in ASP.NET 4.0, they provide you a little bit more room to adjust the ID. So we have a client ID mode property, and you can set it to static, auto, inherit, and predictable. By default, it is inherit. Auto ID, if you set it to auto ID, it will put that container, also append the container ID, which is like CTL001. You don't want that. So most probably in this case, you will want a static ID. So if your ID is GV customer, you want to access the particular grid view using GV customer in your client-side code. So let's go ahead and refresh the page. Let's go and see what's going on, and now you will see that by setting the ID as GV customer, static, we have GV customers as the ID set for the grid view control. One other thing to notice is that the ID of the text box is everywhere it is txt name, and txt name. It's not an error to have the ID of the same element, like the same ID for each element, but it's not really a good idea to do this, because now if you in JavaScript code, if you want to access this particular text box, there is no way that you can do it. Or if you want to do like this text box, you will not know that which text box you're referring to, because all of them have the same ID. So let's change that. Let's go over here, and I'm going to say over here predictable. Predictable means that I'm going to change ID a little bit, and there is a property, I think it's called row ID suffix. So row ID suffix will allow me to put a different ID for each of the rows. So if I say over here, and it must be part of the data source, so I can say customer ID. Okay, let's go over there and refresh the page. Okay, so now if you see the ID of, first of all, if you see the ID of the grid view, it's now changed, and it's now inheriting from the parent control, which is a content placeholder. But if you go down and you check out the ID for each of the text box control, you can see that the text box control ID is changing to the ID or the customer ID that is provided. Customer ID 1, 2. So each ID of each of the text box in a separate row of the grid view control is now different. And you can use anything you want over here. I'm using customer ID, but you can also say, okay, last name. Make sure that this is unique. If it's not unique, it's not going to throw any exception. It will just be harder for you to locate that particular element. Just in this case, let me actually show you. Let's say you have two people whose last name is Azam. You can actually see over here, these IDs are generated and they are exactly the same. So the client ID row suffix, the field that you're using over here, you should always use a, I would say, a unique field. What happens if you mark this as static and you go over here and you say this is predictable? That's an interesting thing. Let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. So we go to the source, and what is actually going on is that this is appending. So this is working as expected. It's doing Azam and it's doing the last name, which you can change it to customer ID. But now your ID of the grid view is now GV customer, which is now static. And that's what you wanted, right? Let's change it to customer ID, and this will be predictable. So in ASP.NET 4.0 give you a little bit more room of adjustment when you are using or you are generating the IDs of the server control, and just make sure that the nested controls, which in this case can be text box or anything that is inside the grid view row, those controls are creating different or unique IDs, or else when you are accessing them on the client side, then it will be very hard for you to determine that which one element you're referring to, because of all the IDs are same. That's pretty much it. On the last note, one thing I like to point out is always go to high on coding. We have 701 content published. So it's like 701 article, videos, podcasts, and there is just so many things that are coming. You can go and subscribe. Here is a subscribe button, and here's a donate button. How about a donation? How about a cup of coffee? I can drink more coffee and write or create more videos. Pretty cool or pretty low donation amount, only $2, $5, $10, or a one-time donation if you like. I do recommend that you visit the website, and there are more articles of 4.0 coming up which will be hosted on the website. I hope you like it. If you have any question, you can email me at awesomesharp@gmail.com. Thank you very much.